Have you ever heard of a letter allegedly written by the devil himself? What sounds like the plot of a horror movie actually happened in a 17th century convent. A nun, known for her devotion, claimed she had been possessed and, in a state of trance, wrote an enigmatic text that remained undeciphered for centuries. If this doesn't sound like the start of a movie you'd watch at midnight with all the lights off, I don't know what does. This is the story of Maria Crocifissa della Concezione, a woman whose life teetered between sanctity and mystery. Was her letter evidence of demonic possession, or was it merely a manifestation of her tormented mind? Today we'll dive into a tale that challenges logic, faith, and even history itself. Welcome to another night where mysteries never sleep. I'm Midnight, and this is 7 Nights. Prepare yourself for a journey through centuries, uncovering secrets hidden in a convent and the shadows that haunted a nun's life. Did evil find a way to manifest in a sacred place? Nuns are, by definition, symbols of purity, faith, and obedience. Women who renounce worldly life to devote themselves to God, living in convents, praying, and engaging in charitable works. The idea that one of these sacred figures could be connected to the supernatural, the profane, or even Satan himself seems unimaginable. Yet, throughout history, accounts of nuns tormented by malevolent forces have challenged common sense. These stories intertwine devotion and terror, creating an atmosphere of mystery that both fascinates and frightens. In popular imagination, tales of possessed nuns are often tied to movies and legends. Like those films that make you afraid to look behind you when you turn off the lights, you know? But what happens when it's not just a movie? When there's something more behind the story? Often, these narratives are dismissed as exaggerations or pure fiction. But what if some of them are real? That's what makes the story of Maria Crocifissa della Concezione so intriguing. An Italian nun from the 17th century, who wrote an enigmatic letter she attributed to the devil himself, challenged the pillars of Christianity and turned her life into a mystery that would span centuries. This letter, written in an indecipherable mix of symbols and languages, remained a riddle for over 400 years. Maria's case is a disturbing example of how the inexplicable can challenge both faith and reason. The mix of demonic possession, impossible codes, and a life dedicated to sanctity creates a contrast that captivates everyone who hears her story. Was the letter a product of the supernatural, or the result of a mind tormented by solitude and the strict rules of religious life? This question has never been definitively answered, but the existence of the document proves that something extraordinary happened on that night in 1676. Maria's story is a journey into the unknown, where the line between reality and the supernatural blurs, leaving only mystery. Details of a story that crossed centuries, challenging scientists, linguists, and the faithful. Did evil find a way to manifest in a sacred place, or was Maria simply a victim of her own vulnerabilities? What we know is that her story continues to echo as one of the most enigmatic accounts in religious history. Maria Crocifissa della Concezione was born as Isabella Tomasi in 1645 into an aristocratic Italian family. The daughter of Prince Giulio Tomasi of Lampedusa, she grew up surrounded by privilege and comfort. However, as was common at the time, the family had specific expectations for women, especially those who would not marry. At 15, Isabella was sent to the convent of Palma di Montechiaro in Sicily, where she began her religious life. Upon entering the convent, Isabella abandoned her birth name, adopting the name Maria Crocifissa della Concezione, symbolizing her commitment to the Christian faith. The name change was a common ritual among nuns, representing a break with the past and the beginning of a new spiritual life. Maria seemed to embrace her new life with devotion, dedicating herself to prayers and convent work. However, there was something unsettling about her spiritual journey. Accounts of Maria suggest that she was a woman tormented by internal conflicts. Early on, she claimed to hear voices and feel the presence of something evil. She believed the devil constantly watched her, trying to divert her from her path of devotion. These confessions began to worry the other nuns, who saw in her a mix of unshakable faith and inexplicable fear. Maria often isolated herself in long prayers, trying to find strength to resist the temptations she claimed to face. This behavior distanced her from the other sisters, who began to see her as an enigmatic and, to some extent, frightening figure. Despite this, she continued to fulfill her religious duties, maintaining an appearance of normality amid her inner turmoil. Her reports of encounters with malevolent forces increased over time. Maria said that Satan not only whispered in her ears, but also made her question her faith. This constant conflict culminated in a night that would forever change her story and mark the convent as the setting for one of the darkest episodes ever recorded. Maria Crucifix's life was a blend of devotion and mystery. Her noble background, her religious dedication, and the inexplicable events surrounding her created a narrative that would span centuries, intriguing everyone who heard of her. What drove this nun to write a letter that still defies our understanding? From the moment she entered the convent, Maria began to exhibit behavior that unsettled the other nuns. Imagine the atmosphere in the convent: total silence, and then suddenly screams, visions, and things no one could explain. It's the kind of thing that would make anyone wary. It was common to hear her scream in the middle of the night, saying she saw shadowy figures in her room. Some sisters, frightened, began to avoid her, fearing something evil was lurking around her presence. Maria, for her part, claimed these visions were Satan's attempts to torment her and test her faith. Once, during a mass, Maria caused panic by fainting near the altar. Before that, she began trembling and murmuring words no one could understand. After regaining consciousness, she told the other nuns that she had heard the devil's voice. He said she would never be worthy of God and that her soul already belonged to him. The episode was interpreted by some as a supernatural manifestation, while others began to question Maria's mental health. The visions and fainting spells continued, and Maria became a figure of concern in the convent. Some sisters began praying for her regularly, asking God to dispel the malevolent forces surrounding her. However, Maria's behavior only grew stranger. She spent hours in isolation, praying with an intensity that bordered on desperation. It was as if she were waging an invisible battle consuming all her energy. The atmosphere in the convent began to change. Tranquility gave way to tension and fear. The younger nuns avoided crossing paths with Maria, while the older ones tried to understand what was happening. The convent, which was supposed to be a haven of peace and faith, was now a stage for uncertainties and mysteries no one could explain. The convent's leaders decided to seek help from priests and exorcists to deal with Maria. The rituals performed, however, did not yield the expected results. During the exorcisms, Maria remained calm, but her enigmatic responses and distant gaze sent chills through everyone present. It was as if something was hidden inside her, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. These episodes seemed to be just the prelude to something bigger. Maria continued to claim she was being supernaturally persecuted, but no one could predict that, on a specific night, she would find herself at the center of one of the most disturbing cases in religious history. The night of August 11, 1676, began quietly, like any other in the convent. The nuns were in their quarters, praying or resting, and silence reigned in the corridors. However, around midnight, desperate screams shattered the calm. The voices came from Maria Crucifix's room, and the sisters ran in panic to discover what was happening. What they found upon opening the door was a scene they would never forget. Maria was lying on the floor of her room, trembling uncontrollably. Her face was smeared with dark stains that resembled ink, and her breathing was irregular, almost gasping. In her hands, she held a piece of paper that seemed to have been written in haste, but the writing was completely incomprehensible. The other nuns called out to her repeatedly, but Maria seemed unresponsive. It was as if she were in a trance, unaware of what was happening around her. After a few minutes, Maria regained consciousness. When questioned about what had happened, she claimed to remember nothing. She only said she had felt an overwhelming presence, something that took over her body and mind, and when she came to, the letter was already in her hands. According to her, the devil himself had guided her hand to write those words. This statement caused immediate panic among the nuns. The letter, upon examination, revealed a script that no one could understand. Think of writing that looks like Greek, Latin, Arabic, and a bit of what the heck. You look at it and sense something is wrong, but you can't even begin to decipher it. It consisted of a mix of Greek, Latin, Arabic letters, and other seemingly invented symbols. The text's complexity made no one dare to interpret it. For some sisters, the document was clear evidence that Maria had been possessed by Satan. For others, it was something that surpassed any human understanding, making it even more terrifying. The convent's leadership decided to keep the letter a secret, fearing it could attract unwanted attention from outsiders. However, the story of what had happened began to spread. The younger nuns, terrified, started avoiding any contact with Maria, and the atmosphere of fear became unbearable. The convent, once regarded as a place of faith and tranquility, now seemed haunted by the presence of evil. That night marked a turning point in Maria's life and the convent's history. The letter was the center of a mystery that no one could explain, and its existence would go on to intrigue not only the nuns but also linguists, historians, and religious scholars over the centuries. What exactly was written on that piece of paper? That question would remain unanswered for hundreds of years. The letter written by Maria Crocifissa was an enigma in every sense. The paper, yellowed and stained, seemed to be marked by more than just ink. What was written there was a chaotic mix of characters, composed of Greek, Latin, Arabic letters, and glyphs no one could identify. For the nuns who dared to look at it, the sensation was one of immediate discomfort. It was as if the document carried an invisible weight, something that transcended the physical plane. The nuns present at the discovery reported a deep sense of fear. To them, the letter was a direct message from Satan, written through Maria to mock the faith and sanctity of the convent. The fact that the writing was indecipherable only reinforced this belief, as no one seemed capable of understanding it. The text's complexity made it appear impossible to be translated, as if it had been designed to be incomprehensible to mortals. The convent leadership decided to store the letter in a secure location where no one else could access it. This measure aimed to protect both the nuns and the convent itself, as they believed the letter could attract even darker forces. However, secrecy was not enough to contain the rumors. The story of the letter began to spread, and soon the case started to attract the attention of scholars and the curious. Over the centuries, various linguists and codebreakers attempted to interpret the text, but none succeeded. The mix of languages and symbols was so peculiar that it defied any attempt at translation. Some scholars believed the letter had been written in a completely invented code by Maria, while others maintained it was concrete evidence of supernatural intervention. Over time, the letter earned the nickname Satan's calligraphy. To many, it was evidence that Maria had indeed been possessed by a malevolent entity. Its existence became a symbol of mystery and fear, challenging both faith and reason. The lack of concrete answers about its content only increased the fascination surrounding it, making it one of the most intriguing documents ever recorded. The letter would continue to be the subject of speculation for centuries. Even with advances in science and linguistics, no one fully deciphered its secrets. Only in 2017, with the help of modern technology, would part of the mystery be unveiled, but the answers obtained would make the case even more unsettling. The discovery of the letter transformed the convent's routine. The nuns, already alarmed by Maria's accounts, now lived in constant fear that something even worse might happen. To many, the letter was proof that evil had found a way to infiltrate the sacred place. The silence in the halls was broken only by group prayers, which became more frequent in an attempt to ward off any demonic influence. Maria, on the other hand, became even more isolated. Even though she didn't remember writing the letter, she knew she was at the center of something no one could explain. Her colleagues began to avoid any direct contact with her, fearing that proximity might put them at risk. Maria's loneliness deepened, and she dedicated herself even more to prayers, as if struggling to regain control of herself. The letter also raised concerns for the convent's leadership. The senior sisters consulted local church officials, who recommended performing exorcisms. During the sessions, Maria did not exhibit violent behaviors, but her distant gaze and unsettling silence made everyone uneasy. Some priests left the ceremonies convinced that Maria was possessed. Others, however, believed she was a victim of a mental collapse. The fear began to spread beyond the convent walls. News of the possessed nun and the demonic letter reached other regions, attracting curious onlookers and scholars who wanted to understand the case. Despite the leadership's efforts to maintain secrecy, it was impossible to contain the rumors. The nuns started fearing not only the unseen evil, but also the exposure that could endanger the convent. Gradually, the convent turned into a place of constant tension. For some sisters, Maria's presence was a reminder of the power of evil and the need for spiritual vigilance. For others, she was a threat, someone who could bring ruin to the place. The doubts about her condition were never resolved, and the atmosphere of faith began to be replaced by a feeling of mistrust. Maria's letter was now a silent presence, kept secret but always remembered. Even without answers, it carried a weight that affected all the nuns in the convent. The mystery surrounding it continued to grow, as did the feeling that this was just the beginning of something much larger. For nearly 400 years, the letter remained an unsolved enigma. Its existence was known, but its content continued to challenge scholars, religious figures, and linguists. Various experts tried to decipher it, but the mix of languages and unknown symbols thwarted all attempts. The text's complexity led many to believe it was impossible to interpret. With every failed attempt, the mystery deepened, solidifying the letter's reputation as one of the greatest puzzles in religious history. The fascination surrounding the letter grew over the centuries. Some believed it contained a prophetic message or an apocalyptic revelation, while others argued it was merely a manifestation of madness or despair. The mix of known languages, such as Latin and Greek, with incomprehensible glyphs raised numerous questions. Had Maria created her own code to protect her thoughts? Or was the letter truly a work dictated by supernatural forces? Accounts of the Satan's calligraphy began to attract not only religious figures, but also curious individuals and academics. The document became a topic of debate in universities and theological meetings, but no consensus was reached. Every attempt to decipher it only reinforced the idea that the letter was written to remain indecipherable. Some suggested the very composition of the message was a form of challenge, a code that could never be understood by human minds. For centuries, the Church avoided discussing the case openly, fearing it could weaken the faith of believers or fuel heretical practices. However, the mystery never disappeared. The letter continued to be preserved in the convent as a relic that carried both fear and fascination. Its reputation spread across Europe, becoming a symbol of something that transcended logic and faith. Some historians hypothesize that the letter might have been a deliberate creation by Maria, but even these theories could not explain the text's complexity. It was hard to believe that a single person, even in a trance state, could create something so intricate without any prior model. This fueled the belief that the document was proof of supernatural intervention, something beyond human comprehension. In 2017, however, advances in technology brought a new possibility. With the help of advanced software, a group of researchers decided to tackle the enigma once again. They believed that, after centuries of failed attempts, they might finally shed some light on the mystery of the letter. It was only in 2017 that Maria Crocifis's letter was partially deciphered. Researchers from the Ludum Science Center, located in Catania, Italy, decided to use advanced technology to try to unravel the enigma that had resisted for nearly 4 centuries. To achieve this, they used decryption software that cross-referenced linguistic data from various ancient languages and archaic symbols. This software, typically used to decode encrypted messages, was fed with information about ancient languages such as Latin, Greek, and Arabic. The researchers also drew on data found on the deep web, including databases mapping rare glyphs and cryptographic systems. The combination of technology and modern methods allowed them to identify patterns that were impossible to detect with the naked eye. After weeks of analysis, the software managed to translate approximately 70% of the letter's content. What was revealed was as disturbing as the mystery itself. The message contained phrases that challenged the foundations of Christianity. One passage stated that humans created God, and that God and Jesus were dead weights. The language carried a blasphemous tone, as if it had been written to shake the deepest religious beliefs. Although much of the letter was translated, some sections remain undeciphered to this day. Among the remaining enigmas is the term Styx, which appears repeatedly in the text. Many believe it references the mythological river that separates the living and the dead, but its meaning in the context of the letter remains unclear. Some scholars suggest it could be a metaphor or a code for something deeper. The translation raised even more unsettling questions. Could a 17th century nun have created such a complex text on her own? Or was the letter truly a manifestation of something supernatural? The revelation of its content reignited debates about the case, further dividing opinions between skeptics and the faithful. Even with partial decoding, the letter did not lose its aura of mystery. On the contrary, the discoveries only heightened the fascination surrounding it. What was revealed seemed to be just the surface of something much greater, something that might never be fully understood. Maria Crocifis's letter continues to be the subject of intense debate, with various theories attempting to explain its origin. For the faithful, the most plausible explanation is that the letter was dictated by Satan during an episode of possession. The symbols and blasphemous phrases would be evidence that the devil had found a way to attack Christian faith, using Maria as a vessel to deliver his message. This theory is widely supported by those who believe in direct supernatural intervention. On the other hand, Many experts believe the case can be explained by psychological factors. Some suggest that Maria suffered from schizophrenia or another mental disorder that caused hallucinations and dissociative episodes. During these moments, she might have created the letter as a way to express her internal conflicts. Auditory and visual hallucinations, such as hearing voices or seeing demonic figures, are common symptoms of certain psychiatric conditions, which supports this hypothesis. There are also those who believe the letter was a deliberate act of rebellion. According to this theory, Maria might have been dissatisfied with convent life and used the text as a way to express her frustration. By creating an indecipherable code, she would have found a safe way to vent without being understood by her peers. This view, though plausible, does not explain the complexity of the symbols and the apparent structure of the text. Another theory suggests that Maria might have been influenced by her historical and religious context. The pressures of convent life, combined with the suppression of heretical thoughts, could have led her mind to create a message reflecting her fears and doubts. In this case, the letter would be a product of her psyche, but deeply influenced by the beliefs of her time. Finally, some advocate a mixed approach, combining psychological and supernatural elements. According to this view, Maria may have been a vulnerable person whose mind was influenced by external forces during a moment of crisis. The letter, in this context, would be a reflection of an internal struggle involving both spiritual and emotional issues. Regardless of the theory chosen, the fact is that Maria Crucifix's letter continues to challenge our understanding to this day. Its existence serves as a reminder that there are mysteries that transcend logic and continue to intrigue us, even centuries after they occurred. Maria Crucifissa della Concesione's story and her mysterious letter are not just eerie accounts. They are windows into the limits of faith, reason, and the supernatural. And that's why we keep revisiting these stories. Because deep down, everyone wants to know where the limits of the impossible lie. The case has spanned centuries, challenging scientists, religious figures, and the curious, maintaining its status as one of the greatest enigmas in history. Even with modern technology and partial decoding of the text, the essence of the mystery remains intact. After all, what really happened on that night in 1676? For the faithful, the case serves as a warning about the presence of evil, which can manifest even in the most sacred places. Maria, a nun who should have been protected by her faith, became the victim of something beyond our understanding. The idea that someone devoted to God could be used as an instrument of malevolent forces is both terrifying and intriguing. It reinforces the belief that evil is cunning and can act where it is least expected. For skeptics, Maria's story reflects the social and psychological pressures of the time. Convent life, marked by isolation and repression, may have triggered mental crises that manifested in extraordinary ways. The letter, in this case, would be a creation of Maria's tormented mind, which found in the mixed symbols and languages a way to express her internal struggles. However, even this rational explanation cannot answer all the questions raised by the case. What makes this story so fascinating is its ability to transcend time. Even after centuries of study and debate, it continues to provoke unanswered questions. The letter remains a symbol of something greater, something that cannot be fully understood by science or religion. Its existence challenges both logic and faith, inviting us to reflect on what is real and what lies beyond our grasp. The figure of Maria Crucifissa herself remains a mystery. Was she a victim of the supernatural, a creative mind, or simply someone who could not cope with the demands of her religious life? Regardless of the answer, her story reminds us that there is much about the human mind and the universe that we still do not fully understand. Perhaps that is why her account continues to resonate so deeply. The story of Maria Crucifissa della Concesione is more than a frightening tale. It is an example of how much we still do not know about the human mind, faith, and possible manifestations of evil. Her letter continues to intrigue religious figures, skeptics, and the curious, standing the test of time as one of history's greatest enigmas. But what about you? Do you think Maria's letter was the work of the supernatural, or merely the reflection of a suffering mind? This story is just one piece of a much larger puzzle. And one day, who knows, we may see the complete picture. If this made you think, subscribe and like the video. It helps the channel grow. Don't forget to share. It's always better to explore mysteries together. If you've made it this far, it's because something in this mystery captivated you. But I bet you haven't seen everything yet. Click on the next videos now to continue your journey into the unknown. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe so you don't miss the next secrets I'm about to reveal. But be careful, once you step inside, there's no turning back.